There is quite a lot of confusion about what Part P actually is. And all it is a section in the building regulations, Section P, and it tells us that the design and installation of electrical installations shall protect persons from fire or injury and be in accordance with BS 7671. And some electrical work in dwellings needs to be notified to a building control body. That's basically it in a nutshell. We're going to go through it in a little bit more detail. You can download a copy of the approved document, Part P, from the gov.uk website. There's the address at the bottom there. I'll just do a search for it, Part P, and that'll come up. And for something that causes so much confusion, it's only 17 pages long, and it's very clear in what it tells you. There are many parts of the building regulations. The part we are particularly interested in is Part P, because that's a section on electrical safety. But the building regs also contain many other parts, some of which will affect our electrical work. So Part A will give us guidance on our installation technique. Part B, fire safety, that's going to tell us about our fire alarms. Part C, that'll be about protecting from external influences. Part E, resistance to the passage of sound. Part F, ventilation, bathroom fans, extractions, such things as that. Part L, conservation of fuel and power. And Part M, that's access and use of the building. So Part P is only applicable to electrical installations that tend to operate at low or extra low voltage, and that they're in or attached to a dwelling, and in the common parts of buildings, excluding supplies to lifts, and in a building that receives electricity from a source located within the dwelling, or in a garden or land associated with the building. And when we design our electrical installation and when we install it, we're making sure that people using that building, that dwelling, are protected from fire or injury, electric shock. So the requirements of Part P will be met if low voltage and extra low voltage electrical installations in dwellings are designed and installed so both of the following conditions are satisfied: that they afford appropriate protection against mechanical and thermal damage, and they do not present electric shock or fire hazards to people. This is where we work to the standards set out in BS 7671. But let's get back to Part P. So in Section 1, Design and Installation, it tells us that installations should be designed and installed according to BS 7671. Then there's a section about the provision of information, making sure you provide the proper electrical certificates, that things are labelled, such as your main bonding connections and circuits and consumer units, and all labelled so people can know what's what. And if it's a big installation, you'd best have some plans for it. Then new dwellings, it's a little bit about accessibility, Part M of the building regulations where that comes into really. Switches and sockets and such are at a height that people can easily reach them. And if it's a new dwelling and by a change of use, you have to make sure that the electrical installation meets current standards. Then additions or alterations, basically it's saying that when you leave the building, it shouldn't be any more unsatisfactory than when you got there. But obviously it should be a lot more satisfactory, it should be a lot better. So no new work should adversely affect the safety of the installation. It's telling us that the rating and condition of existing equipment belonging to both the consumer and the electricity distributor are suitable for the equipment to carry additional loads arising from the new work. Protective measures are adequate, and the earthing and equipotential bonding arrangements are satisfactory. So Part P applies to electrical installations in a dwelling house or flat, or to parts of that installation that are outside the dwelling, so, like air conditioning units fixed on the wall, photovoltaic panels on roofs and such, outbuildings, garages, sheds, greenhouses, that kind of area. In the common areas, corridors and staircases. In the shared amenities or blocks of flats such as laundries, kitchens and gymnasiums. And in business premises, other than agricultural, connected to the same meter as the electrical installation in a dwelling, like a public house below flats. So, if you have a shop underneath the dwelling, and that shop is powered, metered from the same supply as the dwelling, then that business will come under the scope of Part P. Now, if that business is on its own separate meter, the business is not under the scope of Part P, but obviously the dwelling still is. Your garden electrics and stuff, outside sheds, garages, that kind of thing, all Part P. Up in your loft, that's part of Part P as well. Your common areas again, all Part P. Things like lifts, that's a specialist area. They're not under the scope of Part P. Right, a dwelling. It's a self-contained building or part of a building used as residential accommodation and usually housing a single household, but it doesn't have to. A dwelling may be a house, bungalow, flat or maisonette. Basically, it's just where you live. So all dwellings come under the scope of Part P, but a dwelling can have different sizes and classifications, such as a HMO, and that does affect the design and installation work you do. For example, Part B in fire safety, a HMO is going to have a different fire alarm system installed than a one-bedroom flat. So other sections of the regulations do come into play as well. Just like building work, we've got to check that the electrical work has been installed to a particular standard. And how do we comply with this? How do we get a compliance certificate? Well, you have to notify your work, and it's normally notified to a building control body. Generally, your local council has a section which deals with building regulations and such. And this is who we notify. This is who we tell we've done some work. Now, how does the council know if the work's been done correctly or not? So who can notify building control? Well, a registered competent person, such as a member of NAPID or the NIC, they can self-certify their work and notify building control. You could ask building control themselves to actually certify the work. They will send someone to inspect and test. That gets quite involved. Or conversely, there's a third-party certification now. This is where a person comes and they can test the work and inspect the work, but they haven't actually installed it themselves. The simplest way to comply with the regulations is to use a registered competent person. That person can self-certify their own work, so they can design the installation, they can construct it, they can do the inspection testing, and they can commission the installation. As you can see here, the electrician carries out the electrical work. The electrician can then notify building control via his scheme provider, and building control will issue a compliance certificate to the client. An electrician can also give the client an electrical installation certificate. You can actually ask the building control body themselves to certify the work. So if you're going to use building control for notification, the client has to submit plans to building control of any proposed work before it begins and inform building control that they're going to use a non-registered electrician. Building control will then assess the plans and the competence of the installer. All building controls have different procedures, so it's really difficult to tell you exactly what's going to happen. Building control will then set a series of inspections throughout the work and expect ongoing installation certificates and documentations, photographs and such of the work done. And the non-registered installer will carry out the work and provide installation certificates to building control. Building control will then assess the work done and any relevant certification and documentation to decide whether they're going to issue a compliance certificate, and they may require a third-party inspection and test. And if they're happy, building control will issue a compliance certificate to the client, and the non-registered installer will issue the electrical installation certificate to the client. So that's how it works with building control notification. So you can notify building control and let them know that you're going to use a non-registered electrician. Then they're going to want to know quite a lot of information from you. You'll have to fill a form in, letting them know what work's going to be undertaken, number of circuits, then the electrical design, the protection for safety, your current rating, type, size, location, cables to be used, supply characteristics, your earthing and bonding, installation techniques, your cable routes and locations, any types of accessories you're going to be using, maximum demand and loading. So you need to know all the design criteria. So using building control can become quite involved, time-consuming and expensive. You can have various different people on site. They might send third-party inspectors as well. So you might be waiting for a while to get things signed off so you can move on to the next section of the build. And if issue is found, you might have to redo the work and then pay again for the additional testing to show it's okay. Or you can use third-party certification. With third-party notification, the client has to inform the inspector of any proposed work before it begins, and they will arrange a schedule to come around and check. with the client and with the installer. Then the inspector will come round and inspect the work that the installer does over first fix, second fix, and undergo final testing. The inspector will then issue a third-party electrical installation report, not certificate, and submit this to their scheme provider. The scheme provider will audit the report, and if satisfied will contact building control. And building control will issue compliance certificates to the client. The non-registered installer still has to produce his electrical installation certificates and give them to the client. A lot of electricians don't like third-party certification, and even the schemes don't like it. Electricians don't like it because they're signing their name on a certificate to something they haven't really been truly involved in. They haven't been involved in the design or the installation of it. So who gives you the certificates, and what certificate should you be expecting? Well, a building regulations compliance certificate is issued by building control, and that's just a very basic certificate really. It doesn't have any technical information on it. It just basically says what work was done, when it was done, and who did it. There's three main certificates that your electrician will issue you: an electrical installation certificate, a minor work certificate, or an electrical installation condition report. Now, the electrical installation certificate, this is your full certificate, which gives all the details of decoration, who's designed, constructed, inspected and tested it. It covers your supply characteristics and particulars of the installation, and you'll get a full schedule of inspections and a full schedule of test results. So this is the kind of certificate you'll be receiving for a rewire for any new circuits. A minor work certificate is what it says. You wouldn't really be receiving one of these for a rewire. The rewire would be all included in the electrical installation certificate. But a minor works is when a small job's being done, such as adding a socket to an existing circuit. If it's a new circuit, it has to be an electrical installation certificate. But if it's just an addition to an already existing circuit, a minor works will generally cover that. The next certificate an electrician can give you is the electrical installation condition report. Now, this is a periodic inspection and test, and it's generally done years after the installation has been in use, when people want to verify the installation is still safe for continued use. It's not a certificate you would give for your initial verification for the new installation. That's your electrical installation certificate. With your electrical installation condition report, it doesn't take on any responsibility for the design or construction of the installation. It is just purely an inspection and test, a periodic inspection and test. And this is a problem, you see. The person who was doing this report has not been involved in the design or construction, so it doesn't really fully understand the installation. Testing should be done by the electrician as the work commences, as this will spot any faults early on and before making good is done, so it's easy to find the fault and put it right. Testing at the end, as in an EICR, could pick up faults which have since been buried in the fabric of the building and are so much more difficult to find and put right, and could involve destructive access to find the fault. So just to clarify, if an electrician does work, he should issue you an electrical installation certificate. That's for the work done, the design, the installation, and the verification of the work. Now, if you're receiving an electrical installation condition report, that is purely a test report. It is not taking responsibility for the design or construction. And the electrical installation condition report is a periodic test which is done by somebody to verify the installation is safe for continued use. And as with an electrical installation condition report, it can come with quite a lot of limitations where they can't actually test because things are hidden or buried. And therefore, you're not getting a really true picture of your new electrical installation. So anything new, you should be getting an electrical installation certificate. So under Part P, what work is notifiable? Well, it's the installation of a new circuit, the replacement of a consumer unit, or an addition or alteration to existing circuits in a special location. So any new circuit from the consumer unit to whatever it may be, shower, lighting, socket, an FCU, outside lights, anything that uses current, any new circuit that goes back to the consumer unit, that needs to be notified. If it's an addition to an existing circuit, it doesn't need notifying. For example, we had this circuit already installed. We wanted to run another socket so we could power this washing machine. This additional socket would not need to be notified, but you've still got to work to BS7671, so you've got to follow all the design guides. Can the circuit take the extra load? Has it been constructed correctly? Has it been inspected and tested? And has it been certified? Not notified, certified. You still have to give an electrical installation certificate or a minor work certificate. It just doesn't need to be notified if it's an addition or an alteration to an existing circuit. If you replace a consumer unit or add additional consumer units, that work is notifiable. So other work which is notifiable is an addition or an alteration to existing circuits in a special location. And as far as Part P is concerned, a special location means a room containing a bath or a shower, or a room containing a swimming pool or a sauna heater. Then Part P goes on to describe the bathroom zones, which is plenty of information on in BS7671. So we know that notifiable work is the installation of a new circuit, the replacement of a consumer unit, or the addition or alteration to existing circuits in a special location. But what work is not notifiable? Well, all other work is not notifiable. Additions and alterations to existing installations are not notifiable unless it's in a special location, and repair and maintenance anywhere is not notifiable. But all work, notifiable or not, still needs to comply with BS7671. So who can work on electrical installations? Well, all electrical work, no matter how minor, should follow the rules of BS7671 for the design, installation, the inspection and testing, the commissioning and certification of an installation. And all work in dwellings has to comply with Part P of the building regulations. Well, for the design aspect, you've got to be skilled, you've got to have the experience, knowledge, and you should be qualified. Inspection and testing and certification, that's the same. Have the relevant qualifications and experience. Knowledge of the type of environment you're working in, and the correct test equipment to verify installations, and be a registered competent person so you can notify the work. You can get many different people working on site and at various different levels of their electrical journey. You can get labourers, you can get apprentices, you can get people helping out. But what's important is that anybody working on the site is under the direct instruction of a qualified and experienced person. Part P doesn't tell us what qualifications you need. All Part P tells us is that you have to be a registered, competent person to notify the work. So when it comes to notifying your work to building control, which you have to do within 25 days of completion of the work, you'll go onto your scheme's website and there'll be a portal there for notifying building control. And there's various sections you have to fill in the form: the address, the postcode, which local authority it's under, the certificate number, that'll be the electrical installation certificate. Then you have to tell them what type of building it was, a dwelling or whatever. Then the date of the work, like I say, it has to be within 25 days. And then it's going to ask you which scheme it's under. Is it electrical, plumbing, gas? There's lots of different schemes. And then you'll give it a tick box of which work has been done. And then they'll ask you how you actually want the certificate to be delivered to your client. Do you want them to email it to you, or do you want building control to email it directly to the client? Then you press send, and you've got your work notified. And there's generally a small charge for it, around about £3. Right, let's do the Part P flow chart. Right, is the work in a dwelling? Yes, it is. Is it a new circuit, a new fuse board, or work in a special location? Yes, it is. Then that work is notifiable under Part P. Now, is the work completed by a registered competent person? Yes, it is. Great. That registered competent person can notify the work. They will send a notification on to building control. Building control will issue the certificate to the client. That's your Part P done. And again, work in a dwelling, yes. New circuit, new fuse board, special location, yes. Work's notifiable. Is the work completed by a registered competent person? No, it's not. Then you have to arrange a notification by building control or a registered third party. Then they will notify building control, and building control will notify the client, and they will receive their Part P certificate. And again, is the work in a dwelling? No, it's not. Well, the work is not notifiable, but BS7671 still applies. Again, is the work in a dwelling? Yes, it is. Is it a new circuit, a new fuse board, or a special location? No, it's not. Again, the work is not notifiable, but BS7671 still applies. BS7671 applies throughout any electrical work you do, generally. Just one last little point. The word competent is slowly getting taken out of the wiring regs, while it was taken out in the 17th edition. The word they're using now is skilled rather than competent. But anyway, that's part B.